I was sitting in a cafe across from Reed Tower when I first noticed him. Alexander Reed, the man whose name adorned half the skyline. He walked with purpose, eyes forward, completely detached from the world around him. People parted like the Red Sea as he passed. That same man, just 8 months later, was kneeling in a park helping a little boy tie his shoelaces, laughing as a little girl placed a flower crown on his perfectly styled hair. I've spent years documenting how love transforms people, but nothing prepared me for witnessing the complete metamorphosis of one of the most powerful men in the country. The story I'm about to share isn't just about romance. It's about how the right person can shatter the walls we build around ourselves. Some say money changes people, but what I witnessed was something far more profound. How love can change even those who seem beyond its reach. This isn't a fairy tale. It's the true account of how a struggling single mother accomplished what countless wealthy, connected women couldn't, melting the frozen heart of the business world's most notorious ice king. Alexander Reed wasn't just wealthy, he was legendary for his coldness. At 38, he had built Reed Innovations into a tech empire that revolutionized artificial intelligence, but his personal reputation was just as well known as his business acumen. They called him the Ice King in boardrooms across the country. His negotiation style was ruthless, his decisions calculated, and his emotional responses non-existent. Executives would prepare for weeks before meetings with him, only to leave feeling like they'd faced a human algorithm rather than a man. Women from high society to Hollywood had tried and failed to capture his attention. The gossip columns documented each rejection, how he'd cut conversations short, decline invitations without explanation, and remain completely unmoved by even the most beautiful or accomplished suitors. His employees feared him. His competitors respected him. Nobody claimed to know him. What most people didn't know was why Alexander had frozen his heart. The betrayal that had transformed him from a passionate innovator to a man who viewed emotions as weaknesses to be eliminated. He had built an empire of glass and steel. But inside it, he remained completely alone, exactly as he preferred it. The day that changed everything began ordinarily enough. A routine job interview for a financial analyst position, one of dozens conducted at Reed Innovations each month. A position Alexander Reed would normally never concern himself with. Elena Martinez arrived 7 minutes late, hair slightly disheveled, a faint coffee stain on her blouse. She had no connections, no prestigious MBA, and a gap in her employment history. On paper, she was thoroughly unremarkable compared to other candidates. But fate has a curious way of arranging collisions between worlds that should never intersect. Alexander had only entered that interview room because of a scheduling error. He had meant to attend a meeting about acquiring a competitor 2 floors up. It was a 60-second mistake that altered the course of 2 lives forever. What happened in those brief moments defied explanation. Something in Elena's honest words cut through years of practiced indifference. It wasn't her appearance or charm, it was her authenticity, her unapologetic prioritization of her children above everything, including impressing the infamous billionaire standing before her. Neither of them could have anticipated how this chance encounter would completely rewrite their stories. Have you ever witnessed someone's entire worldview change in an instant? That moment when a belief system built over decades suddenly crumbles? Most of us go through life with our perspectives shifting gradually, small realizations that accumulate over time. But occasionally, we experience or witness that rare lightning strike of clarity that divides life into distinct before and after. For Alexander Reed, that moment came when Elena Martinez spoke about her twins. Not with apology or excuse, but with fierce pride. In her words, he heard something alien to his world of strategic advantage and calculated risk. Unconditional love. For Elena, that moment arrived later, when the man everyone feared showed up at an elementary school performance, standing awkwardly in his tailored suit among parents in casual clothes, simply because she had said it mattered. These transformative moments force us to question everything we thought we knew. They challenge us to consider, what walls have we built around our own hearts? What unexpected person might hold the key to unlocking parts of ourselves we've kept hidden, even from ourselves? What beliefs are you holding on to that one encounter could completely shatter? If this story already has your attention, you're going to want to stay for every detail of what happens next. This journey from isolation to connection might just change how you view your own relationships. Before we continue, take a second to hit that like button if you believe in the power of authentic connections. Subscribe to Twists of Love and Fate to receive more true stories that reveal how unexpected encounters reshape lives. Each week on this channel, we explore remarkable transformations, not just romantic ones, but profound shifts in how people see themselves and the world around them. We share these stories not just to entertain, but to inspire you to remain open to life-changing possibilities in your own journey. Drop a comment below, sharing a moment when someone surprised you by being completely different from your first impression. Your story might resonate with thousands of others experiencing similar revelations. The tale of Alexander Reed and Elena Martinez reveals truths about wealth, power, family, and vulnerability that might challenge your assumptions about what truly matters in life. Are you ready to discover how a struggling single mother melted the heart of the business world's most notorious ice king? Let's continue. Alexander Reed wasn't born into wealth, quite the opposite. His childhood in a struggling Midwest town taught him early that security had to be earned. His father worked double shifts at a factory that eventually shut down, while his mother cleaned houses to keep food on the table. At 14, Alexander built his first computer from discarded parts, staying up until dawn coding. By 16, he'd created a rudimentary algorithm that caught the attention of a visiting tech professor. A scholarship followed, then MIT, where Alexander slept 4 hours nightly while classmates partied. His first venture failed spectacularly. His second earned him enough to rent office space. His third, an AI platform that could predict consumer behavior, made him his first million at 26. Reed innovations emerged from Alexander's uncanny ability to see technological shifts before they happened. While competitors focused on hardware, he invested in machine learning. When they finally caught up, he had already pivoted to neural interfaces. Year after year, his vision proved prophetic. By 35, Alexander had amassed billions, with offices on 3 continents. The shy, hungry boy from nowhere had become a man whose decisions influenced global markets and whose name represented innovation itself. 5 years before meeting Elena, Alexander had been a different man. Behind closed doors, colleagues spoke of his intensity but also his fairness, his demanding standards but also his loyalty. He worked relentlessly but laughed occasionally. Most significantly, he had loved deeply. Vanessa Chen had been his equal in ambition and intelligence. As Reed Innovation's chief strategy officer, she had stood beside Alexander through the company's most explosive growth period. Their relationship had progressed from professional respect to friendship to love, with a certainty that made Alexander believe in concepts like destiny. The proposal happened on a rare vacation, the ring custom designed like everything else in Alexander's life. Wedding plans were underway when he discovered the truth. Vanessa had been feeding proprietary information to Meridian Tech, Reed's largest competitor, for 18 months. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It had nearly cost Alexander control of his company. The board meeting where he presented evidence of her espionage became corporate legend. "How could you?" he had asked privately, after security escorted her out. "Business is business, Alex," she'd replied without remorse. "You taught me that." That night, Alexander systematically removed every trace of her from his life, and with it, his capacity to trust. In the years following Vanessa's betrayal, Alexander Reed transformed from a demanding but fair leader into a figure that inspired both awe and dread throughout the business world. Board meetings became surgical operations, where weaknesses were exposed without mercy. Negotiations left even veteran executives shaken. "Reed doesn't negotiate, he dissects you until you give him what he wants," one CEO commented after selling his company to Reed Innovations for 30% less than his target price. Alexander's management style became legendary for its precision and lack of sentiment. Employees who delivered results thrived. Those who failed disappeared from the company roster without fanfare. His annual reviews were feared for their brutal honesty and exacting standards. "He doesn't see people, He sees functions and outcomes, a former executive assistant revealed in an anonymous interview. It's like working for a brilliant machine. Competitors learn to fear his strategic moves. When Reed Innovations entered a market, established players immediately lost value. His acquisition strategy was compared to a chess grandmaster, always several moves ahead, sacrificing pieces strategically for ultimate victory. Even philanthropically, Alexander operated with calculated efficiency. His foundation funded educational initiatives with measurable outcomes, not emotional appeals. Every donation required data-driven results, transforming charity into another arena where Alexander Reed's cold brilliance dominated. Alexander's systematic rejection of romantic possibilities became as much a part of his public persona as his business acumen. Society pages documented his brief appearances at charity galas, always alone, always departing early. Women who approached him described conversations that ended abruptly when personal topics arose. The pattern was consistent: polite disinterest followed by clear dismissal. A supermodel known for captivating billionaires confessed to friends that speaking with Reed was like talking to a wall with perfect manners. A European princess who pursued him at an economic forum in Davos found herself suddenly discussing market projections rather than dinner plans. His executive assistant maintained a standard response to the flowers, invitations, and gifts that arrived regularly at his office. "Mr. Reed appreciates your gesture but must decline. No explanations, no exceptions." Those closest to Alexander, the small circle of executives who had survived his transformation, knew better than to mention his personal life. One vice president who suggested a blind date was transferred to the Singapore office the following week. Even his mother's gentle inquiries during their monthly calls were deflected with practiced ease. "The company requires my full attention," he would say, changing the subject to her garden or health, never acknowledging the concern in her voice. Despite his extraordinary success, Alexander's life had become a study in emptiness disguised as efficiency. His penthouse overlooking the city featured minimalist design that architectural magazines praised, but felt more like a high-end hotel than a home. No photographs adorned the walls, no mementos cluttered surfaces. Nothing revealed the man behind the empire. His routine never varied. 4:30 a.m. workouts with a trainer who knew better than to attempt conversation. Breakfast while reviewing international markets. 14-hour workdays punctuated by meetings where decisions worth millions were made without hesitation. Dinner alone, often forgotten until his assistant reminded him to eat. Weekends brought no respite, just fewer interruptions as he reviewed reports and planned strategic moves. Holidays passed unacknowledged except for obligatory appearances at the company's annual celebration, where he delivered the same speech about exceeding expectations in the coming year. Before departing, while festivities continued without him, sleep came reluctantly, his mind constantly calculating, analyzing, preparing. Sometimes, standing at his floor-to-ceiling windows at midnight, Alexander would watch the scattered lights of other apartments and momentarily wonder about the lives unfolding in those illuminated spaces. These rare moments of reflection never lasted. The empire required constant vigilance. Success demanded sacrifice. And Alexander Reed had convinced himself that the hollow feeling in his chest was simply the necessary cost of extraordinary achievement. Elena Martinez's day began at 5:15 a.m., not by choice but by necessity. The small two-bedroom apartment in the city's east side came alive with her quiet movements, coffee brewing, lunches being packed, clothes laid out with military precision. By 6 a.m., she would allow herself 15 minutes to shower and dress before the real morning chaos began. "Sophia, Lucas, time to wake up, my loves," she'd call, her voice shifting from the tired whisper of pre-dawn to the cheerful tone she maintained for her children, regardless of how exhausted she felt. The twins had just turned 5, that magical age where questions never ceased and energy never waned. Getting them dressed, fed, and ready for daycare resembled a carefully choreographed dance that Elena had perfected through necessity. Teeth brushing happened while Elena quizzed them on simple addition. Hair combing coincided with vocabulary practice. Breakfast included discussions about the day ahead. "Remember, Mrs. Wilson is picking you up today because Mommy has an important meeting," Elena explained, wiping syrup from Lucas's chin while simultaneously helping Sophia find her missing shoe. The morning rush ended with a breathless race to the bus stop, followed by a transfer to the train that would take them across town to Bright Beginnings Daycare, the only facility Elena could find that offered extended hours for working parents at a rate she could almost afford. After drop-off came Elena's commute to whatever temporary position her employment agency had secured that week. Bookkeeping, administrative support, data entry. Elena accepted anything that utilized her accounting degree and worked with her children's schedule. Evenings brought the routine in reverse. Pickup, dinner preparation, while supervising homework, bath time, story time, and finally, blessed bedtime. Only then, in those precious quiet hours, could Elena work on job applications, update her resume, or take online courses to keep her skills current. Every day was a marathon. Every week, a test of endurance. But for Sophia and Lucas, Elena made it look effortless. Elena had met Marco Martinez during her sophomore year of college. He was charismatic, ambitious, and seemed genuinely supportive of her career goals. Their courtship had been a whirlwind. Late-night study sessions that turned into deep conversations about their futures, weekend road trips to nearby cities, and dreams of building something meaningful together. Marriage came after graduation, followed by promising career starts. Elena joined a respected accounting firm, while Marco pursued opportunities in international sales. For 3 years, they built what Elena believed was a solid foundation, a modest home, growing savings accounts, and plans to start a family once they felt financially secure. The pregnancy test revealing twins had accelerated their timeline, but brought unexpected joy. Marco had painted the nursery himself, assembled cribs on weekends, and attended every doctor's appointment. When Sophia and Lucas arrived, he had held them with tears in his eyes, promising to be the father he himself never had. The first signs of trouble appeared when the twins were 8 months old. Marco's business trips grew longer. His calls became less frequent. His enthusiasm for midnight feedings and diaper changes waned. Elena attributed it to work pressure and sleep deprivation, trying to shoulder more responsibilities to ease his transition to fatherhood. Then came the morning Elena woke to find Marco's closet emptied and a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this. I'm not meant to be a father. I've accepted a position in Buenos Aires. Don't try to contact me." No warning, no discussion, no goodbye to the children he had helped create. The bank accounts were empty except for 1 month's rent. His phone number was disconnected. His email returned automated responses. The international company he worked for claimed no knowledge of his whereabouts. At 29, Elena found herself completely alone with 10-month-old twins and the shattered remains of what she had believed was a partnership built on love and trust. The financial reality of single parenthood hit Elena like a physical blow. Childcare for twins cost more than her rent. Returning to work full-time meant paying for that childcare, but staying home meant no income at all. The mathematics of survival became Elena's nightly obsession as she calculated and recalculated her options while the twins slept. She sold their home, moving to a small apartment that cut her housing costs in half. The wedding ring funded 6 months of part-time childcare. Her car, a graduation gift from her parents, was traded for a reliable but far less valuable model, providing a small financial cushion. Elena negotiated a 3-day workweek with her firm, accepting a significant pay cut and the understanding that partnership was no longer in her future. The remaining weekdays she worked remotely as a freelance bookkeeper, often typing with one hand while holding a fussy baby with the other. Sleep became a luxury. Meals were often whatever could be prepared in 15 minutes or less. Personal time vanished entirely. Friends with simpler lives gradually stopped calling when Elena couldn't join their outings or conversations without interruptions. When the accounting firm downsized during an economic downturn, Elena's part-time position was among the first eliminated. The severance package lasted 3 months. The unemployment benefit stretched another 4. The freelance work remained steady but insufficient. Credit cards that had once been for emergencies only became lifelines for groceries and utilities. Payment due dates transformed into a high-stakes juggling act. Which bill could wait? Which service might be most forgiving of lateness? Which necessity could be temporarily classified as a luxury? Through it all, Elena refused to let desperation show in front of her children. She created adventure meals when ingredients were scarce. She turned apartment maintenance issues into camping experiences. She crafted toys from household items when new ones were impossible. Her determination wasn't just about survival, it was about creating a childhood for Sophia and Lucas that wasn't shadowed by their father's abandonment or their mother's struggles. Despite sharing identical birthdays and similar features, Sophia and Lucas couldn't have been more different in temperament and needs. Sophia was methodical and observant. At 5, she organized her crayons by color and her books by size. She approached new situations cautiously, watching before participating. Her questions were thoughtful and specific. Why does water turn to ice? How do birds know which way is south? She formed deep attachments to a select few friends and treasured one-on-one time with Elena, often asking to help with grown-up tasks like measuring ingredients or sorting laundry. Lucas was all motion and impulse. He built towers just to watch them fall, asked why not to hear the answer but to formulate his next question. He made friends instantly but rarely remembered their names. His energy seemed inexhaustible, his curiosity boundless. Where Sophia found comfort in routine, Lucas thrived on novelty and surprise. Both children showed remarkable resilience, adapting to changing circumstances with minimal complaint. They shared a powerful bond with each other, finishing each other's sentences, developing their own twin language, defending each other fiercely against code playground slights. What they needed most, stability, consistency, individual attention, were precisely the things Elena struggled most to provide while balancing work and survival. The Reed Innovations job posting appeared in Elena's daily employment search like a beacon. Financial analyst, a position matching her qualifications perfectly, offering a salary that would transform their lives, with benefits including on-site childcare for employees' children. Elena spent 3 days perfecting her application, staying up until 2 a.m., refining her resume and crafting a cover letter that highlighted her relevant experience while tactfully addressing her employment gap. She researched Reed Innovations extensively, studying their financial reports and recent acquisitions to prepare for potential interview questions. When the call came, inviting her for an interview, Elena's hands shook so badly she could barely write down the details. That night, she removed her one professional outfit from its protective plastic, carefully steaming out wrinkles and checking for any needed repairs. "This is it," she whispered to herself in the bathroom mirror. "This is our chance." The stakes couldn't have been higher. Her unemployment benefits were ending, the temporary positions barely covered essentials, the twins needed stability, routine, security, all things impossible without financial foundation. Elena knew the odds were against her. Reed Innovations was known for hiring from elite universities and prestigious firms, but desperation had hardened into determination. This wasn't just a job opportunity, it was the lifeline her family needed. The morning of Elena's interview unfolded like a masterclass in Murphy's Law. Her alarm failed to sound, giving her 30 minutes less than planned. Lucas woke with a low-grade fever, necessitating a frantic call to Mrs. Wilson to confirm she could still watch him. The coffee pot overflowed, sending brown liquid cascading across the counter and onto Elena's only pair of professional shoes. "Mommy, why are you wearing your special clothes?" Sophia asked, accidentally smearing jelly on Elena's sleeve as she reached for a hug. By the time Elena dropped the twins at daycare, after completing incident reports for Lucas's fever and promising to check in hourly, she was already running 15 minutes behind schedule. The crosstown bus crawled through unexpected construction. The coffee stain on her blouse resisted her desperate attempts to remove it with a dampened napkin. Her carefully prepared interview notes were somehow missing from her folder. Reed Tower loomed like a glass and steel monolith against the sky, intimidating in its perfection. Elena's reflection in the polished lobby doors showed a woman trying desperately to appear composed while coming apart at the seams. "I'm here for the financial analyst interview," she told the receptionist, acutely aware of being exactly 7 minutes late. Elena Martinez. The 40th floor of Reed Tower bore little resemblance to the warm, collaborative workspaces Elena had known. Chrome, glass, and stark white surfaces created an atmosphere of clinical precision. Employees moved with purpose, conversations conducted in hushed tones, eyes rarely straying from screens or documents. Ms. Martinez, a woman with an immaculate bob and expression of practiced neutrality, approached. "The panel has been waiting. Follow me." The interview room contained 4 executives seated behind a glass table, 3 men and 1 woman, all wearing variations of the same charcoal gray attire. Their faces revealed nothing as Elena apologized for her tardiness. "Let's begin," said the oldest man, not acknowledging her explanation about daycare complications. "Your resume shows a significant employment gap." For 20 minutes, the questions came rapid fire, each designed to expose weaknesses in her experience or knowledge. They interrupted her answers, challenged her assertions, and exchanged glances that Elena couldn't interpret. "Your technical skills seem adequate," the woman noted, "but Reed Innovations demands exceptional. Our analysts regularly work 60-hour weeks during quarterly closings. Would that be a problem for you?" The question wasn't just professional, it was a trap. Elena recognized the subtle test: admit family limitations and appear uncommitted, or promise impossible availability and set herself up for failure. The door opened without warning, cutting off Elena's carefully crafted response about work-life balance. The atmosphere in the room instantly transformed. Backs straightened, expressions shifted from clinical assessment to alert attention. Alexander Reed entered with the casual confidence of someone who owned not just the building, but the air within it. His tailored suit fit perfectly against his tall frame. His dark hair showed traces of silver at the temples. His eyes, a penetrating blue that matched the company logo, scanned the room before settling on Elena. "Mr. Reed," the senior interviewer said, surprise evident in his voice. "We weren't expecting you to join this interview." "I was passing by," Alexander replied, his tone revealing nothing. "Continue." He took a seat at the far end of the table, opened a tablet, and appeared to review something on the screen. Yet Elena felt his attention remained on her, evaluating, assessing. The panel's questions became noticeably more technical, as if performing for their CEO. Elena maintained her composure, answering with precision despite the added pressure of Alexander's presence. After several minutes of silence, Alexander closed his tablet and leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Martinez," he addressed her directly, his voice neither warm nor cold. "Your resume suggests you're overqualified for this position. Why should Reed Innovations hire you when we have candidates from more prestigious backgrounds?" Elena felt the weight of 5 pairs of eyes on her. The coffee stain on her blouse seemed to burn against her skin. The practiced answers she had rehearsed evaporated from her mind. In that moment, Elena made a decision. Not a strategic one, but one born from the bone-deep exhaustion of pretending that balancing single parenthood and career ambitions was effortless. "Because I will work harder than anyone else," she began, meeting Alexander's gaze directly. "I have 5 years of experience in financial forecasting that saved my previous company millions. But more importantly," she paused, taking a breath that felt like stepping off a cliff, "I have 2 5-year-old twins who depend solely on me." The room went completely still. The panel members glanced nervously at Alexander, whose expression remained unreadable. "They've taught me efficiency, crisis management, and negotiation skills that no business school could. I've learned to maximize every minute, to solve problems with limited resources, to persist when giving up seems easier." Elena straightened her shoulders, the coffee stain forgotten. "I don't have the luxury of failure, Mr. Reed. When my children need food on the table and a roof over their heads, good enough isn't an option. Excellence isn't just my goal, it's my only choice." The silence that followed Elena's response stretched uncomfortably. Alexander Reed's expression remained completely neutral, his eyes never leaving her face. The panel members seemed frozen, unsure how to proceed after such an unconventional answer. Finally, Alexander stood abruptly. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Martinez." The dismissal was clear. Elena gathered her portfolio with hands she forced not to tremble, thanking the panel with as much dignity as she could muster. As she reached the door, Alexander spoke again. "Our HR department will be in touch." The standard closing line, delivered without inflection. Elena nodded and left, certain she had just sacrificed a life-changing opportunity on the altar of honesty. 3 days later, Elena was helping the twins with dinner when her phone rang with an unknown number. "Miss Martinez? This is Diane from Reed Innovations HR." Elena braced herself for the polite rejection. "We'd like to offer you the financial analyst position with a starting salary of..." The figure named was nearly double what Elena had expected. "There must be some mistake," Elena said, gripping the counter for support. "No mistake," Diane replied. "Mr. Reed personally approved your compensation package and requested expedited onboarding. He also noted you should be informed about our on-site childcare center. When can you start?" Elena's first month at Reed Innovations defied every expectation. The on-site childcare center transformed her mornings from chaotic races to peaceful transitions. Sophia and Lucas thrived in the state-of-the-art facility, making friends with other employees, children, and benefiting from the educational curriculum. Professionally, Elena quickly proved her worth. Her first assignment, analyzing international market expansion costs, revealed inefficiencies that would save the company millions. Her approach combined technical expertise with practical insights that more traditionally trained analysts had overlooked. "You identified variables our team missed entirely," her direct supervisor noted during her first performance review, "particularly the regional tax implications." Elena established a routine that maximized efficiency. She arrived at 7:30 a.m., worked through lunch, and left precisely at 5 p.m. to spend evenings with the twins. After their bedtime, she often logged back in remotely, completing projects until midnight. Her colleagues initially kept their distance, perhaps sensing her different circumstances or responding to rumors about her unusual hiring. But her consistent results and willingness to help others gradually earned their respect. What no one knew was how Elena tracked every expenditure, saving aggressively toward an emergency fund, or how she studied company reports after hours, determined to justify the salary that had transformed her family's life. Success wasn't optional. It was survival. Alexander Reed rarely interacted with employees below executive level. Yet in the weeks following Elena's hiring, he found himself creating reasons to observe her work. He requested her presence in meetings where financial analysts typically sent reports rather than attending personally. He assigned her to projects that required delivering findings directly to him. Each interaction revealed something that unsettled his carefully ordered worldview. Unlike others who nervously overprepared for meetings with him, Elena presented her analyses with straightforward confidence. She answered questions directly, admitted when she didn't know something, and never attempted to impress him with unnecessary complexity. Alexander found himself noticing details he typically ignored. How she always carried a small notebook rather than relying solely on digital devices. How she wore the same 3 professional outfits in rotation. How she thanked support staff by name. Most disturbing was his growing awareness of the time. At precisely 4:55 p.m., regardless of the meeting's importance, Elena would politely note she needed to leave at 5 to collect her children. No one else in the company would dare announce such a boundary to Alexander Reed. His executive assistant noticed his unusual attention to Elena's projects. "Should I add Ms. Martinez to the leadership pipeline program?" she asked. "No," Alexander replied. "Just keep me informed of her work." He couldn't explain, even to himself, why this particular employee occupied his thoughts. The evening meeting ran later than scheduled. At 8 p.m., Alexander found Elena still working in her office, surrounded by financial projections for a potential acquisition. "Your children?" he asked from the doorway, startling her. "With my neighbor," Elena explained, quickly gathering her papers. "I arranged backup childcare for tonight's deadline." Alexander studied her for a moment. "Have dinner with me." It wasn't quite a question, but Elena found herself nodding, perhaps too surprised to decline. The restaurant was exclusive enough that the matter day greeted Alexander by name, leading them to a private corner table overlooking the city. Elena felt acutely aware of her day-worn appearance among the elegant evening crowd. "Why finance?" Alexander asked after they ordered. "Numbers tell honest stories," Elena replied. "No hidden agendas, no emotional manipulation. Just truth, if you know how to read it." Their conversation flowed with unexpected ease. Alexander found himself sharing details about Reed Innovations' founding that few had heard. Elena described her college years working multiple jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA. Neither mentioned her children until dessert arrived. "Tell me about your twins," Alexander said suddenly. Elena's expression transformed, warmth replacing professional reserve. "Sophia loves drawing and science. Lucas is obsessed with dinosaurs and building things. They're the reason I get up every morning." Alexander watched her speak, fascinated by this version of Elena. Animated, unguarded, genuine, in a way he'd forgotten people could be. 3 weeks after their unexpected dinner, Alexander's assistant approached Elena's desk with an expression that mixed apology with warning. "Mr. Reed requests your presence at a client dinner tonight. Meridian Technologies CEO is considering a partnership. 7 o'clock at La Maison." Elena checked her calendar, where school play 6:30 p.m. was highlighted in red. For weeks, the twins had practiced their roles in their kindergarten performance of The Giving Tree. Sophia had 2 lines as a branch. Lucas was the boy who grew up. "I can't attend," Elena replied, maintaining eye contact. "Please convey my apologies to Mr. Reed." The assistant's eyes widened. "No one declines Mr. Reed's requests." "Then he'll have to fire me," Elena said simply. "My children have been practicing for this play for months. They're counting on me being there." Word spread quickly through the office. Elena Martinez had declined a direct request from Alexander Reed. Colleagues stopped by her desk with expressions ranging from admiration to concern. "It was nice working with you," one whispered. At 5 p.m., Elena left as usual, ignoring the speculation around her. She had made her choice without hesitation. The twins' faces when they spotted her in the audience would be worth any professional consequence. Some boundaries weren't negotiable, even for the most powerful employer in the city. The elementary school auditorium buzzed with excitement. Parents clutched programs and flowers, positioning phones to capture precious moments. Elena sat in the 3rd row, waving when Sophia peeked from behind the curtain. Just as the lights dimmed, a tall figure entered through the rear doors. In his impeccable suit, Alexander Reed looked completely out of place among the casually dressed parents. Several heads turned, recognizing the billionaire whose name adorned half the city's skyline. Elena froze as Alexander spotted her and made his way to an empty seat at the end of her row. The principal's welcome speech began, preventing any conversation. The children's performance was endearingly amateur. Forgotten lines, visible stage fright, occasional bursts of unexpected confidence. When Lucas delivered his lines without hesitation, Elena felt tears of pride forming. When Sophia's branch grew by standing on tiptoes, scattered laughter and applause filled the room. Throughout the performance, Elena was acutely aware of Alexander's presence. His expression remained unreadable, his attention fixed on the stage. As the final bows concluded and parents moved toward the stage to collect their children, Alexander approached Elena. "Your children are talented," he said simply. "Thank you for coming." Elena replied, genuinely surprised. "But what about your client dinner?" "I rescheduled," Alexander answered, as if it were the most natural decision in the world. Alexander's appearance at the school play marked the beginning of a subtle but unmistakable shift. The following week, he happened to be leaving the building just as Elena and the twins were walking to the bus stop. His driver appeared, and suddenly they were being offered a ride home. "Do you live in a castle?" Lucas asked Alexander during that first car ride, studying the man's perfect suit with undisguised curiosity. "No, just a very tall building," Alexander replied, his usual clipped tone softening slightly. That ride became a pattern, not daily, but frequent enough that the twins began looking for Mr. Alex's big car when leaving the childcare center. Sometimes Alexander joined them, other times just the driver appeared with instructions to see them home safely. Educational toys began appearing on Elena's desk, a molecular building set for Sophia, a dinosaur excavation kit for Lucas. Each gift was thoughtfully selected, never extravagant enough to cause embarrassment, but precisely aligned with the children's interests. When Lucas developed a fascination with baseball, Alexander appeared at his t-ball game, standing awkwardly among cheering parents, but remaining until the final inning. When Sophia's class needed career day speakers, he arranged for a female engineer from Reed Innovations to visit. Each gesture was measured, careful, As if Alexander were slowly testing unfamiliar waters, one cautious step at a time. The company's rumor mill operated with algorithmic efficiency. Within days of Alexander's first appearance at the school, speculation about his relationship with Elena spread through every department. He rescheduled the Meridian meeting. "Reed never reschedules for anyone," whispered an executive assistant in the break room. "I saw him helping her kids into his car," reported a security guard. He actually smiled when the little boy said something. The finance department divided into factions, those who believed Elena had strategically used her children to capture the CEO's attention, and those who defended her work ethic and professional boundaries. HR representatives began monitoring conversations, concerned about potential harassment claims. Senior executives watched the situation with calculation, assessing how this unexpected development might affect their own positions. Several began including Elena in emails and meetings, hedging their bets on her potential influence. "The Ice King is melting" became the coded phrase used when Alexander showed uncharacteristic flexibility or patience in meetings. Elena remained oblivious to much of the gossip, focused on her work and children. But she couldn't miss the changed dynamics. How conversations stopped when she entered rooms, how senior managers suddenly sought her opinion, how her project requests received immediate approval. "People are talking," her one work friend warned during lunch. "Be careful. Office politics can turn vicious when the CEO is involved." "Would you and the twins like to see where I live?" Alexander asked one Friday afternoon, the invitation delivered with studied casualness that didn't quite mask his uncertainty. That Sunday, Elena found herself in Alexander's private elevator, ascending to the penthouse that occupied the top 3 floors of Reed Tower. Sophia and Lucas pressed their faces against the glass wall, watching the city shrink beneath them. The penthouse itself was a study in contrasts, architecturally stunning but emotionally barren. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views. Minimalist furniture and muted tones created perfect symmetry. Nothing appeared touched or lived in. "It's like a museum," Sophia whispered, afraid to disturb the silence. Then Alexander led them to a room that didn't match the rest of the space. A model train set occupied a custom-built table, with miniature landscapes and buildings creating an entire world in miniature. "I built this when I was younger," Alexander explained, his voice softening. "Would you like to operate the controls?" Lucas's eyes widened with delight. "Really? We can touch it?" For the next hour, Alexander showed the twins how to control the trains, explaining the electrical systems and engineering principles behind the models. Elena watched in amazement as the normally reserved CEO knelt on the floor, patiently demonstrating how to adjust the track switches. In that moment, surrounded by childish laughter, Alexander's penthouse finally contained something it had always lacked: life. The twins fell asleep during the animated movie Alexander had suggested, curled together on his oversized sofa. Elena tucked a throw blanket around them, smiling at their peaceful expressions. "They trust you," she said quietly, joining Alexander by the windows. "That doesn't come easily, especially with Lucas." "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Alexander asked suddenly. "Everyone else is." Elena studied him in the fading evening light. "After dealing with twin toddlers during the terrible twos, very little intimidates me anymore." His laugh was unexpected, a genuine sound that transformed his features. "I've never met anyone like you," he admitted. "You see me as a person, not a bank account or a power broker. And you see my children as people, not burdens," she replied softly. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken recognition. When Alexander leaned forward, Elena met him halfway. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning, a conversation rather than a declaration. Elena pulled back first, her thoughts clearing. "Alexander, I need to be honest. I can't offer you what other women might. My children will always come first. My time will always be divided. My priorities are non-negotiable." Instead of disappointment, Alexander's expression showed something closer to relief. "That's precisely why I'm falling in love with you," he confessed. "You've shown me what really matters." Alexander Reed, master of global markets, feared negotiator, strategic genius, found himself completely unprepared for the complex ecosystem of family life. Each new experience revealed how much he had to learn. Dinner at Elena's apartment introduced him to the chaos of simultaneous conversations, spilled drinks, and food negotiations with picky eaters. His attempt to help with dishes resulted in soap bubbles across the kitchen floor, much to the twins' delight. Bedtime routines proved equally challenging. Alexander's first attempt to read a bedtime story failed when he treated it like a business presentation, moving efficiently through the text without doing the character voices that Lucas insisted were essential. "You have to be silly sometimes," Sophia explained patiently, showing him how to make the proper roaring sound for the story's dragon. Weekend outings required planning that rivaled corporate mergers. Snacks, changes of clothes, first aid supplies, entertainment options. Alexander's pristine sports car acquired Cheerios and crevices and small fingerprints on windows. Most surprising was his discovery that his legendary focus and efficiency meant nothing when a 5-year-old decided to have a meltdown in a public place. Yet through each new challenge, Alexander found himself experiencing something entirely new. The satisfaction of earning small victories, not measured in dollars or market share, but in children's trust and laughter. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, bearing the letterhead of a prestigious law firm. Elena opened it at her kitchen table. The twins already dropped off at school, pursuant to the parental rights of Marco Martinez. The legal language was dense, but the message was clear. After nearly 5 years of complete absence, the twins' father was demanding visitation rights and financial compensation for his emotional suffering due to separation from his children. A phone number was included. With shaking hands, Elena dialed. "Elena, it's been too long." Marco's voice was exactly as she remembered, smooth, confident, without a trace of remorse. "What do you want?" she asked. "I've heard about your connection to Alexander Reed. Quite the step up from our humble beginnings." The implication was unmistakable. This wasn't about the twins. It was extortion, thinly veiled as parental concern. "I want what I'm owed," Marco continued, "or I'll fight for custody. Your choice." "He's threatening to sue for custody if I don't pay him," Elena told Alexander that evening after the twins were asleep. "He doesn't care about them. He just knows I'd do anything to keep them safe." Alexander's expression darkened. "Let me handle this." One call from Reed Innovation's legal team. "No," Elena interrupted firmly. "This is my battle. I appreciate your support, but I need to face him myself." She had spent the afternoon researching. Marco had no legal standing after years of documented abandonment. His attempt at extortion could actually be used against him. Most importantly, Elena refused to allow him to believe she needed rescuing. "I've protected the twins for 5 years without anyone's help," she explained more gently. "I can't set the precedent that their father can manipulate me through them, or that I need someone else to fight my battles." Alexander looked ready to argue but stopped himself, studying her determined expression. "What do you need from me?" he asked instead. "Just be there," Elena answered. "Not to intervene. Just to witness that I can handle this." Alexander Reed was unaccustomed to standing on the sidelines. His instinct, honed through decades of business battles, was to deploy overwhelming resources against threats. His legal team could bury Marco in litigation. His investigators could uncover whatever secrets the man was hiding. His financial power could ensure Elena never had to face her ex-husband directly. Yet watching Elena prepare for the confrontation, Alexander recognized something he'd rarely encountered: strength that had nothing to do with power or position. "I'll be there, but I won't interfere unless you ask," he promised, respecting her boundaries despite his protective instincts. The night before the meeting, Alexander found Elena at her kitchen table, surrounded by documents. Bank statements proving Marco had emptied their accounts, certified letters returned unopened, records of her attempts to locate him for child support. "You've been preparing for this for years," Alexander realized. Elena nodded. "Not because I expected him to return, but because I needed to know I had done everything right. That the twins would never doubt I protected their interests, whatever happened." Alexander's admiration deepened, recognizing a strategic mind that rivaled his own, but one guided by love rather than ambition. The meeting took place at Elena's lawyer's office, a modest practice specializing in family law, not the prestigious firm Marco had expected. Alexander waited in the reception area, respecting Elena's wishes while remaining close enough to intervene if needed. Marco arrived 15 minutes late, his designer suit and confident smile suggesting he expected an easy victory. His expression faltered slightly upon seeing Alexander in the waiting room. Inside the conference room, Elena sat with perfect posture, a folder of documents before her. "You abandoned your children," Elena stated calmly when Marco began his rehearsed speech about fatherly rights. "You have no legal standing. My lawyer has documented your absence, your failure to provide support, and your current attempt at extortion." She slid the folder across the table. "Walk away now, or face the consequences." Marco's facade cracked as he reviewed the evidence, including records of his own statements denying paternity to avoid international child support. "This isn't over," he threatened weakly. "Yes," Elena replied. "It is." When Marco stormed out, he avoided meeting Alexander's gaze in the waiting room. When Elena emerged from the conference room, Alexander stood, searching her expression for signs of distress. Instead, he found calm certainty. The look of someone who had faced a long-feared confrontation and discovered their own strength was sufficient. "He's gone," she said simply, "and he won't be back." They walked in silence to Alexander's waiting car. Once inside, he finally spoke. "You didn't need me at all," he observed, a note of wonder in his voice. "No," Elena agreed, meeting his gaze directly, "but I wanted you with me anyway. That's the difference." In that moment, Alexander recognized something profound. Throughout his life, people had needed him for his money, his power, his influence. Elena was the first person who wanted his presence while being perfectly capable of standing alone. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her, taking her hand. "Not because you never need help, but because you know exactly when to stand your ground." Elena's smile held both vulnerability and triumph. "That's what being a mother taught me." 3 months after the confrontation with Marco, Alexander found himself in Elena's living room on a Sunday evening, helping fold laundry while the twins finished their homework at the kitchen table. The domestic scene, so ordinary to most, so extraordinary to him, struck Alexander with unexpected clarity. He picked up one of Lucas's small t-shirts, carefully aligning the sleeves the way Elena had shown him. "I want to build a life with you and the children," he said simply, placing the folded shirt in the proper pile. "Not because you need me, but because we're better together." There was no grand gesture, no carefully orchestrated setting, just the quiet certainty that had grown through hundreds of small moments, school pickups and dinner preparations, weekend outings and bedtime stories. Elena paused, a pair of mismatched socks in her hands. "Are you proposing to me while folding laundry?" Alexander considered the question. "Yes," he decided. "I am." The ordinariness of the moment made it perfect. Real life, not fantasy. A beginning built on truth. Elena set down the socks and took Alexander's hands in hers. Her expression was serious despite the joy in her eyes. "Yes," she said, "but I have conditions." Alexander nodded, expecting nothing less from the woman who had redefined his understanding of strength. "We move slowly. The twins have to adjust to each change. Their emotional well-being comes first," Elena began. "I keep my job, no favoritism, no special treatment. I've worked too hard to be seen as anything but a professional who earned her position." Alexander listened attentively, recognizing the importance of each boundary. "Our home remains here, at least for now," Elena continued. "The twins need stability, not luxury, and we make decisions together, about them, about us, about everything that affects our family." "Family," Alexander repeated, the word still new on his tongue. "That's what we're building," Elena confirmed. "Not a merger, not an acquisition, a family." Alexander agreed to all her terms, adding one of his own. "And I want to legally adopt Sophia and Lucas when they're ready, if they want that." The laundry remained half-folded, forgotten as they sealed their agreement with a kiss. Their wedding took place 6 months later in the botanical garden, where Alexander had first taken the twins for a picnic. The guest list was small: Elena's closest friends, Alexander's mother, and a handful of colleagues who had become genuine friends rather than business connections. Sophia served as maid of honor, taking her role with characteristic seriousness. She carried a basket of flower petals, carefully distributing them in a precise pattern along the path where Elena would walk. Lucas, as best man, approached his duties with equal commitment. He had practiced for weeks to ensure the rings, tied securely to a small pillow, would reach the altar safely. "Do you promise to love my mom forever and ever?" Lucas asked Alexander solemnly during the ceremony, an unplanned addition to the traditional vows. "And do you promise to always read bedtime stories, even when you're tired?" Sophia added. "I promise," Alexander replied, his voice steady despite the emotion visible in his eyes. When the officiant pronounced them married, it wasn't just Elena and Alexander who embraced. Sophia and Lucas joined them, creating a circle that symbolized their new family. Reed Innovations transformed alongside its founder. The company that had once been known for its demanding culture began implementing family-friendly policies that industry observers attributed directly to Alexander's changed perspective. Flexible work arrangements became standard rather than exceptional. The on-site childcare center expanded to include after-school programs and summer activities. Parental leave policies exceeded national standards by months. Most significantly, the company culture shifted from valuing presence to valuing results. Employees who previously hid family commitments began openly blocking time for school events and family dinners. "The data supports these changes," Alexander explained to skeptical board members. "Retention has improved 30%. Productivity metrics show employees with work-life balance consistently outperform those working excessive hours." What he didn't say was how his own productivity had improved since finding balance. His strategic thinking had gained depth. His decision-making incorporated longer time horizons. His leadership inspired loyalty rather than just compliance. The business press called it a revolutionary approach to corporate culture. Alexander knew it was simply the application of lessons learned from watching Elena successfully balance work and family for years. 1 year after the wedding, Elena was promoted to CFO, based solely on her performance metrics and innovative financial strategies. That same evening, as the family celebrated with pizza and ice cream at home, Sophia looked up from her dessert with a thoughtful expression. "Alexander," she began hesitantly, "we've been thinking about something important." Lucas nodded in agreement, chocolate ice cream smudged across his chin. "Really, really important." Alexander set down his spoon, giving them his full attention, a skill he'd perfected over months of family dinners. "Would it be okay if we called you Dad?" Sophia asked. "Not because we forgot our first dad, but because you do all the things dads are supposed to do. Like teaching me baseball and fixing my bike," Lucas added. "And checking for monsters and helping with math homework," Sophia continued. Alexander looked to Elena, who nodded encouragement through tears. "Nothing in my life," he said, voice thick with emotion, "would make me prouder than being your dad." The twins launched themselves into his arms, ice cream forgotten in the significance of the moment. That evening, watching his family from the doorway of their home, not his penthouse, but a comfortable house with a yard where the twins could play, Alexander reflected on how completely his definition of success had transformed. For decades, he had measured achievement through acquisitions, market share, and profit margins. His worth had been calculated in buildings bearing his name and competitors who feared his next move. Success had meant control, power, and the ability to bend circumstances to his will. Now, success looked like Sophia mastering a difficult math concept after weeks of struggle. It sounded like Lucas's laughter during their weekend camping trips. It felt like Elena's hand finding his during family movie nights. "What are you thinking about?" Elena asked, joining him at the doorway where he stood watching the twins build an elaborate fort from couch cushions and blankets. "That I spent years building an empire of glass and steel, thinking it would fulfill me," he replied, pulling her close. "But you three showed me that the only legacy worth having is love." The metrics that now mattered couldn't be charted on quarterly reports or annual statements. They existed in moments of connection, in growth measured not by market expansion, but by emotional courage, in wealth counted not in dollars but in memories. Through their journey, both Alexander and Elena discovered truths that transformed not just their relationship, but their understanding of life itself. That true worth isn't measured by wealth or status, but by character and integrity. By showing up consistently for those who matter. That the strongest people aren't always the most powerful, but those who persevere through adversity, without losing their capacity for kindness. That genuine love sees beyond surface appearances to the person within, recognizing potential even when hidden behind protective walls. That children aren't obstacles to happiness, but catalysts for profound personal growth, teaching lessons no business school could offer. That maintaining boundaries and independence strengthens relationships rather than weakening them, creating partnerships built on respect rather than need. That past betrayals don't define our capacity for future love. They merely test our courage to remain open to possibility. And perhaps most importantly, that real success is measured not by what we accumulate, but by whom we become through our connections with others. These weren't lessons learned easily or quickly, but through daily choices to prioritize what truly matters. The transformation of Alexander Reed, from the feared Ice King to a man who knelt to tie children's shoelaces and attended school science fairs, stands as testament to the extraordinary power of authentic love. Not the superficial attraction that fades with time or circumstance. Not the calculated exchanges that characterized his previous relationships, but the genuine, unvarnished love that Elena offered, love that expected nothing in return but demanded honesty and respect as its foundation. This kind of love doesn't simply change circumstances. It changes people at their core. It rewrites the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we're capable of becoming. For Alexander, love melted defenses built over decades. It challenged his belief that vulnerability equaled weakness. It revealed strengths he never knew he possessed: patience, playfulness, the capacity to put others' needs before his own. For Elena, love restored faith in possibilities she had abandoned. It proved that independence and partnership could coexist. It showed her children that second chances sometimes exceed first dreams. Even the most hardened heart remains capable of transformation when met with persistent authenticity. Even the most carefully constructed walls can crumble when someone cares enough to see the person hiding behind them. The miracle isn't that love changes us. It's that it reveals who we truly were all along, beneath the armor we constructed to protect ourselves. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to share it with someone who might need to be reminded that transformation is always possible, that no heart is too hardened, no circumstance too fixed, no pattern too established to be changed by authentic connection. Hit that share button if you believe in the power of love to reveal our best selves, even when we've forgotten who that person might be. Subscribe to Twists of Love and Fate for more stories that illuminate how unexpected encounters can completely redirect our life's path and challenge our assumptions about what truly matters. Drop a comment below sharing your own experience with transformation, whether you were changed by love or were the catalyst for someone else's journey. Remember, the most powerful stories aren't fairy tales of perfect people finding perfect happiness. They're honest accounts of flawed humans finding the courage to grow, to risk, to become more than they believed possible. Your own story of transformation might just be beginning. 5 years later, the Reed family's Sunday tradition remained unchanged despite the passing years. Alexander flipped pancakes while Elena prepared fruit, the kitchen island covered with homework projects, sports equipment, and the organized chaos of family life. Sophia, now 10, sat cross-legged on a civility coding on her tablet, a skill Alexander had begun teaching her last summer. Her methodical nature had evolved into a gift for systems thinking that impressed even Reed Innovations' senior developers. Lucas, her twin in age but opposite in temperament, bounced between helping his father and adding details to the elaborate model city that had taken over one corner of their dining room, a project they had been building together for months. "Dad, can we test the solar panels today?" Lucas asked, carefully balancing a miniature streetlight. "After breakfast," Alexander promised, the word "Dad" still bringing a subtle smile to his face even after years of hearing it. Outside, spring sunshine illuminated their yard, not the manicured perfection of wealth, but the lived-in space of a family that valued experiences over appearances. The years had changed both Alexander and Elena in ways neither could have anticipated. Alexander, once defined by his singular focus on business, had discovered talents for coaching Lucas's baseball team and helping with Sophia's science club. His legendary attention to detail found new purpose in remembering the names of the twins' friends and tracking their developing interests. Most surprisingly, he had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Reed Innovations, appointing a CEO while remaining as chairman. "The company will survive without my constant presence," he had explained to shocked executives. "My family might not." Elena had grown equally. The woman who had once structured her entire life around protecting her children had learned to occasionally put herself first, completing her MBA, accepting speaking engagements about financial leadership, even taking occasional solo trips to recharge. "They need to see me as a whole person, not just their mother," she had realized. "And I need to remember who I am beyond that role." Together, they had found balance neither believed possible. Careers that remained challenging without consuming their lives, a partnership that respected independence while providing unwavering support, and a family culture that valued both achievement and joy. Their greatest growth came through vulnerability. Learning to share fears, admit mistakes, and accept that perfection was never the goal. Connection was. The choices Alexander and Elena made, prioritizing family over traditional success metrics, maintaining boundaries while building intimacy, choosing authenticity over appearance, created ripples far beyond their immediate lives. Reed Innovations became a case study in corporate culture transformation, with companies worldwide adopting their family-friendly policies. The retention rate for women in leadership positions reached industry-leading levels. Alexander's public speaking now focused less on business strategy and more on redefining success, particularly for men who had been taught that vulnerability equaled weakness. His foundation shifted focus to supporting single-parent families with both financial resources and practical support systems. Elena's financial literacy program for young people, especially girls, expanded nationally, teaching not just money management, but the relationship between financial independence and personal agency. The twins thrived in an environment that valued their individuality, while teaching them responsibility to something larger than themselves. They understood, even at 10, that family wasn't just about blood connection, but daily choices to show up for each other. Most importantly, their home became a place where others felt welcome, accepted, and inspired to examine their own definitions of success. Life rarely follows our carefully constructed plans. The most significant moments, the ones that fundamentally alter our trajectory, often arrive disguised as ordinary days, chance meetings, or even apparent setbacks. For Alexander Reed, a scheduling error that placed him in the wrong meeting room changed everything. For Elena Martinez, a coffee stain and a moment of raw honesty during a job interview redirected her entire future. Neither could have predicted how completely their lives would intertwine, or how profoundly they would transform each other. No strategic plan, no careful calculation could have engineered the family they created together. Perhaps that's the most beautiful truth about human connection. Its power to surprise us, to heal wounds we've stopped acknowledging, to reveal strengths we never knew we possessed. We cannot control when or how these life-changing encounters will occur. We can only remain open to their possibility, courageous enough to recognize them when they appear, and willing to follow where they lead, even when the destination remains unknown.